be. There we are.
I forgot to adjust.
Excellent connection. Lucky for us.
We can't see that little green thingy though. That states that, can we?
Broadcasting to Facebook. Connecting live video. We're connected.
Well, I just finished out the last page in my journal.
Live video is starting on Facebook. You're now
Look
live
at that.
on Facebook.
I started this journal on January 1st.
Did you really?
Yeah, January 1st, 2022, and then I just ended it on December 31st, 2022.
2022, and
shit, now we're gonna have
and the companion object was 122 million miles from Earth.
What
Right?
to do?
Is that what it was?
I don't remember.
It said something like that. We would have been a little earlier, except somehow I moved the dock window for the multi-stream in order to stream to Facebook. And I moved it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. It was still listed in my tools on OBS, and it was still listed as docs, and I had it clicked that it was viewable, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I had to reinstall everything. After I tried multiple, then I couldn't reinstall because somehow Microsoft Edge was sharing the library with OBS, and I didn't have anything running on OBS from Microsoft Edge, so I rebooted the computer, and it was still running things from Microsoft Edge. I had like 6 tasks running with no explanation for why they were running, so I deleted them all, and pain in the ass, and I had to reinstall everything, and looked at a video on YouTube again to remind me how to put the multi-docs in there. Fortunately, I think we're up.
We're up and running.
I guess. We'll see if there's anybody around this New Year's Eve. Ellis, we got Chris Sierra here. Happy New Year to you. I hope you all have a very happy New Year.
There, I adjusted it just a little bit.
And let's see, Facebook.
Live chat.
Happy New Year to all.
Well, we still have some...
Stephen Turner's here. Happy New Year to you.
Great. He asked me if we were going to live stream, so we're actually live streaming for you. For everybody, of course. But
Paladin, Happy New Year to you. XF, hello there. XF. I don't know how Stephen Turner, oh yeah, okay. So he came in here and he left a chat message, but it still didn't say that there was a viewer.
Who knows?
And now Voorhees Ryan is here, and it still says there's one viewer.
Don't worry about it.
What's with this Facebook? Well, it's working. I should be happy that it's working.
Yes, don't worry about it.
Hello, Voorhees Ryan.
We meant to start around 10, but...
I just explained how I was...
We don't need to hear it again.
Screwing around. I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to explain it again. But I had some problems with the OBS software.
Well, you know, that's typical of this year, this past year, right? There's just some problems that kind of pop up last minute, and we just, Sawyer especially just kind of powers through, and he has this, like, determination and stubbornness, you could call it, to just, you know, power through it and get going. I'm just like, screw Facebook. We won't even, you know, let's just live straight from Facebook and screw the OBS software and let's just do it. And
oh my gosh, the more people are hanging in there on our OBS, I don't know if there's more or less. It doesn't really matter. We want to do it to both places if we can.
Well, yeah. So, but he figured it out. So we got it up and running. So we want to say, what do we want to say? A big FU to 2022.
Uh-oh, Paladin. Paladin.
What?
He says, I don't know, but I want to repeat this.
Let me read it.
I'll
I'm
say
gonna
it.
twerk when the fireworks
Is
go
Cathy
off.
going to twerk when the No, I'm going to twerk.
I don't know how to do
I'm
that.
the twerker. You ready to see this?
Don't get up. He's in his underwear, basically.
I am not. I've got sweatpants on. Is there a pot at the level above human or just down here? Yeah, there's a big pot in the level above human. It's
You
called
got something in you right now.
it's called the cauldron of molten trash discarnates.
What
How's
the
that?
hell?
And it's in the center of the earth. It's where all the volcanic matter is circulating.
There is no pot in the next level
That's
as
the
far
pot.
as far as we understand it.
They don't need such things.
Right.
We
But-
don't, we
but-
need such things
but
sometimes.
We just listened to, was it yesterday or the day before? We just listened to Beyond Human Session 12 and watched it. Those are like almost like old favorites. It's like comfort food for me because I feel like I've already watched them all several times and I've read the transcript, so I feel, like I could just kind of put it on in the background and I don't have to pay that much attention. But then we get so engrossed in it. But Doe talked about people, he could understand people having addictions if you didn't know the information. He said even if he didn't know the information in his conscious mind that he would probably be an addict too, just to get through this world. So
He said he might not be
he wouldn't have to go into hospital
Yeah,
to
in order to cure himself.
yeah, but
But-
that he would. I was using that.
He'd be a user.
Excuse me. I was using that as justification for the amount of weed that I smoked before. And also a couple other different things like in Doe's intro, purpose and belief. In the Heaven's Gate book it says another fact is that what someone is into during the time a representative is not present really doesn't matter that much, except that they are found unprepared when one comes. The only time when the kingdom of heaven can be offered to you. So I would, was using little snippets, and that's absolutely true. Doe said it, so it's true. Like, it doesn't really matter that much what you're into while they're not here. So, but at the same time, you'll be unprepared. I mean, I still use that as justification for Sawyer and I having the relationship that we do. Like we need some kind of comfort in this shitty ass world.
Shitty ass world that is great to be living in because it gives us the opportunity to still serve to some degree, even though, nobody's perfect in that service. You can strive for perfection, but what is perfection? Perfection is a constant endeavor,
What are you saying?
right? I mean, and so
I want to say hi to everybody.
the classroom that existed
Sweet little girl.
was what would be required of each of us if we were in the circumstance of joining up with the older members in the human environment. And I did have that opportunity, and I didn't get a passing grade. And so I'm still here, but I haven't denied my older member. I haven't gone against them as far as I know. And so I think that I've got another shot. But we're still going to have to eventually overcome all the things that we haven't overcome in this world. But so that's being prepared for is, addressing those demons, so to speak, to the degree that each of us chooses to, and in the timing that each of us chooses to. And that's always the way it is. I mean, even in the classroom, students were choosing how much effort to put out. We just watched the Heaven's Gate Max documentary, Cult of Cults.
4-part series on HBO Max, because I started a free trial. Why did I start that? So we could watch... What was the first movie we watched? It doesn't matter, I guess.
I don't remember now.
We've been doing a movie night every night.
Not tonight, though, probably, I don't think.
No, we just watched 4 hours
tonight
of...
we're doing
no.
live stream, but...
We just watched 4 hours of that. We got up at 2 today, 2 p.m. today.
Yeah, because we went to bed at like 3:30 or something.
We went to bed actually early.
Yeah, right.
But we got up at 2, and then I was thinking, since we had the HBO Max, the free trial, because I hadn't seen the whole entire special. I'd seen parts of it, but I hadn't seen all of it, so we watched that. We watched one, and then we took a break for about an hour or so, and then we watched the second one, and then we took a break, and then we watched the last 2. Sawyer looks really good in it.
I do.
I think so. I thought so.
They gave me a lot of time. I think it was mostly positive compared to everybody else. Almost everybody else that was negative.
I know, that was a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, it's depressing to see my ex-classmates that are, I think, still living, talking down about T and Doe. Like Cathy said at one point, she was watching one of them talking. She just felt I wanted to slap him.
That was Miss whatever the hell her name is, what is her name?
Layla? She wasn't.
Yeah.
She wasn't part of the classroom.
I know, but she was the one that I wanted to.
Oh, she was the one. I thought it was
Frank, maybe.
Yeah, that's what you meant.
Frank is very slappable too.
I mean, not that. It's one, I mean, you can hear Frank.
Of course, he's not slappable. But I don't
no,
wanna,
of course not.
If he was watching these live streams,
he's a
I
gentle
wouldn't
soul.
want him. Yeah, he seems like a relatively. For me, it would just. I don't know.
It's just telling
can't judge people, but for the whole he answered something in the class one time and spoke in a deep voice, and then he thought that Doe was mocking him, and so basically 18 years of rage boiled up inside him. That's what he said, rage.
Yeah.
He felt rage when Doe questioned why he was talking in that voice, and how he said, "How dare you put me down?" and that he was humiliated.
In his head he said that.
Right, he didn't say that out loud, but then he left the group either, I don't know, very quickly after that because of that incident. And that he had developed a severe speech impediment. But then we watched that video when he was on Larry King Live, and it didn't sound like he was talking like that at all.
Not much. A little bit he was still, but I guess it wasn't that
it just felt like some
pronounced.
kind of psychological thing that he... I mean, of course, I can't be the judge of anybody, but...
He did have some of that show through in that interview, but not that one clip that they played. It didn't really show much. He didn't say much either. It's when he has to express himself more about this that he's got conflict about it. I mean, on the one hand, I think he believes in T and Doe, and on the other hand, I guess he thinks that Doe got off track.
Yeah, he made that pretty clear.
And that's the conflict, because if you believed in T, you could never think that Doe got off track, because you wouldn't have the capacity to make that judgment. You would know that you wouldn't have the capacity to make that judgment, regardless of what Doe did, because you would have known his mind enough and known T's mind enough to where you know that T gave him full confidence in the task. And that sounds like, kind of brainwashing, right? But, see, I personally, I'm an enigma to the psychologists. That's why some of them have tried to study me. But then they don't study me very long because I kind of blow their theories out of the water. I'm supposed to be like, tortured soul, and I wouldn't be able to adjust to the world after being brainwashed for 18 years or 19 years. And, and then I was naive, and I was like in need of being in some group to make myself feel better about myself, and all this stuff that's a bunch of baloney that they can't pin on me. But then they can say that it's an exception. This guy's an exception, right? But I'm not an exception. The classmates, probably all of them, most of them anyway, would have, if they found themselves outside the classroom, which many did, as Doe says in Doe's Final Exit, for periods of time. And they adjusted pretty well, even though they weren't happy. And I adjusted pretty well, and I thought I was happy a little, somewhat. But I wasn't happy at the same time. But I mean, in terms of, every human experiences happiness and unhappiness, right? Unless they're totally void of mind at all, an experience. Because even the rich and everything, they have lots of problems. Anyway, so I don't know. It's just, the first half of that show, the first 2 episodes, was pretty much setting the stage, showing what T and Doe were teaching, and
sort of.
Right?
It was a twisting of it, though.
Yeah, but then it really came on strong with the twisting part towards the second 2 episodes, I think, right?
Yeah.
And to where it was harder and harder to watch, but I did take notes, and maybe one of these days I'll go through them a little bit, or I'll just write something up about it.
I just feel like nobody has yet really explored the subject and just reported on it, and just said exactly, it's all like, we have to explain this somehow. There's no way that what they said was true. So every documentary, every media story, interview, whatever, is all to try to explain away something that can't be explained. As far as, how about just take them for their word, and what they said was true, and then let's do a show about that.
Right, like
Not
what,
like
what if we
having
did a
to
show
say
that
everyone's brainwashed, and they were in searching for a place in society, but that was outside of society. That's not what they said. That's my words, but that's kind of the gist of it. Then on one hand, they would say, like somebody said, I think it was actually Frank might have said it, that he said that Doe was very paranoid, but maybe somebody else said it, or Rob Balch or Ben Zeller, whatever, that Doe was very paranoid and thought that, family members were after them, and, people were looking for them. And then literally in that same time span, that like a minute, less than 30 seconds later, they've got Frank on saying that one of the members,
Alodi's dad
had contact with the FBI and even traveled around the country looking for them. So it's like,
yeah.
you just like yeah. He wasn't paranoid. That was actually really happening. Like they were, and then they all, like in that same little slot, they were also talking about how Nancy Brown had started. Who is Nancy Brown again?
Alex Odie's vehicle's mother.
That she had started a newsletter and a network of the families that were actively searching for them. So Doe wasn't paranoid. He was
right. He didn't
realistic.
He didn't want to knock on the door from
paranoid
authorities and saying, "Is so and so here?
Yeah.
If so, we've got a warrant to search," or
So that was
Is he
interesting.
here against his will? Disrupt the classroom. That's what could have happened. That happened to other groups, even though the other groups were nothing like the Heaven's Gate group.
The last episode was probably the most distressing. And the other thing that I wanted to state, though, was about how, they were setting up the whole beginning of it as far as T and Doe meeting, and they're going on about, so they found some guy that was a student of Doe's when he was a music instructor, which I'm going to guess he probably had at least 30 to 40 students, if not more. I don't know, how music classes were set up back in the 70s at the University of Alabama. I think that's where he taught.
Mm-hmm.
If you had just, in high school where you've got, 30 students in one class, they leave, another class comes in. So potentially you had hundreds of students, but there's one guy that is sitting there, and he recounts the story of what he was told. That he was told by somebody, don't know who, told by somebody that Doe had a nervous breakdown, a psychotic break, and was put in the hospital. He was institutionalized, and that T was his nurse. In the same minute or two, literally, it was interesting how they did that. They just, I don't know, it was weird. They go to Terry, and Terry's talking about being a candy striper in the same hospital that her mom worked at. Terry is T's daughter. Terry's talking about how she, volunteered to be a candy striper in the hospital that her mom worked, and then, with her mom. So, just that statement alone, did they have candy stripers in mental institutions? I don't fucking think so.
But what is her mother doing?
But just that point alone,
mm-hmm.
They don't have volunteer freaking teenagers coming in to psychotic wards.
Right.
A mental institution. But she clearly stated that her mother, Bonnie Nettles, who is T's vehicle's name, that she loved babies. That she was a nurse, a pediatric nurse. She was a nurse for babies. So I don't know how you go from being a nurse to babies, infants, preemies that are just born, to all of a sudden being a psychiatric nurse and, on the site. It just doesn't make sense.
No. So why not believe what Doe said?
But yeah, they don't want to believe what Doe actually said. They just want to make up this fabrication.
They did end up playing.
Yeah, they played what he said.
Yeah.
But then they tried to discredit it.
Right.
I thought she's at her spot. My cat is so smart that she goes to a puke station. It's probably TMI. We got a crap ton of comments. See, I told you I should make you more coffee.
No, I don't want any more. This is enough.
Okay, I'll get you some more water. Well, I oversee
so
the puking.
Ryan Voorhees says, hi you, and then he says, Happy New Year, my cat hates it, so I made her a hidey hole with a weighted basket.
I think you need to go up in comments or something. It sounds like you missed something there.
No, but I think it was a response to when Evie was over here doing things. I'm not sure. Anyway, then he says, ha ha, hey, 2022 can be a learning experience as all bad things, right?
Yeah.
I love how she's like the bad cop to your good cop.
Me?
I guess so. You are awesome. I'm not a good cop. No, I mean.
Compared to me, I guess.
Oh, boy.
You guys should see him with that off camera. No, I'm just kidding. He's exactly what he is.
Well, I should say she's more blunt. Ha ha.
Yeah.
I just had HBO Max for Impractical Jokers.
Oh. Yeah,
Happy New Year from Jess LM.
Oh, hey, Jess LM. Yeah, I'm not paying $15 a month for a bunch of stuff I don't even want to watch. So I already set up the cancellation, but we have it till January 3rd.
Happy New Year. You've mentioned Beyond Human. I remember being a small child and seeing these late at night. Oh, really?
Nice.
I was compelled to watch and felt so connected with Doe and his words. In March of graduation, I was 10. And
Wow.
remember the news as well. And always felt like I missed something. What the hell? This thing's not scrolling by right.
Sawyer loves Facebook.
Remember the news as well. I always felt like I missed something. I was too young for the class, but so crazy how I recognized the information. Yes, that's the point. That's what happens. You know, it's like, you know, for anybody that's coming to this information, curious about it, or, you know, some people have just said that they enjoy hanging out with Cathy and I, and whatever it is. I mean, you're not going to enjoy hanging out with us if you don't have some kind of draw to the information. You might not agree things with everything, but you know, some kind of draw to the information, because the influencers don't really want anybody to have a draw to this information. And so the only way that people have a draw to this information is if the next level sees that somebody, a vehicle, has interest to some degree in some way, and then gives them a little bit of help to like, you know, get those influences away from them that would say, oh, if you pay attention to this information, you're going to become like them. You're going to get brainwashed, and you're going to go kill yourself, or all this baloney that would never happen in terms of the next level. And so when we're watching like this HBO Max documentary, right, we're watching people trying to put together a scenario for all the people that don't want to think about it as what it really was.
Right, exactly. They're trying to like explain the unexplainable.
So they take little bits and pieces of things that are said and they build their scenario.
I always wonder, like, and I remember when I was in church that the pastor would say, and even my youth pastor would say, you know, I wonder how people would treat Jesus if he came back today. Well, we know that. We know how they treated him because he was Doe. But it's just interesting to see. I don't know. They just discredit is the name of the game, right?
Right. Like what was that one spot that let's see. I meant to say before that Arthody, known as Michael in the documentary.
Michael Conyers.
Yeah, he said something about how, you know, Doe was paranoid. I think he was one of the people that talked about it.
Is he the one that said that? Maybe.
Yeah, and yet then they followed that with all the reasons why. They even had Ben Zeller reading the FBI report. Oh no, it was Rob Balch maybe. I don't know, one of them who read the FBI report that showed that they were investigating T and Doe.
Yeah, he was like, here's the file on Marshall Applewhite. Here's the FBI file on it.
Right, so a lot of people have seen that.
Somebody had called a U.S. senator, you know, because their kid, you know, disappeared into this group. Oh, last time that we live streamed, I always talk about coloring just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. I got this new set of pencils for Christmas I bought for myself. I'm swatching them right now. These are what they are. Not that anybody really cares. But a gal had private messaged me on Facebook and said, if you start a coloring group on Facebook, that she would love to be a part of it. So if anybody wants to do that, I thought that sounds cool. Let's do a Heaven's Gate coloring group. That sound fun, guys.
You better get it approved by who.
Oh, right. They don't have that copyrighted.
I'm sorry, I'm being sarcastic. That is one of the things that I need to overcome.
But anyway, message me on Facebook. I'm Cathy Weaver, Cathy Weaver. And because right now it would just be me and this other gal, and that sounds kind of boring. So I'm sure we're both lively people, but I'd rather have more than one of us, and then we can all color together. Yippee!
Okay, sounds good. So Ryan Voorhees says, if it was building up, why did he wait so long instead of just talking it out? What do you think that was referring to? Since that was a few minutes ago that he said that.
Maybe the exit? T and Doe, even right from the very beginning, talked about exiting this planet. They just didn't know how that was going to happen.
And right from the beginning, they were talking about how
so it wasn't really anything
they
new.
thought that they might exit first and then come back for the students. And which was thought that was going to happen quickly. And then in 1978, they told us that they might exit their vehicles after they realized that the so-called killing in the streets that was talked about in Revelation 11 had happened through the media. Well, just so you know that the word kill in that
scripture
book of Revelation's records is apokatino, and I know a lot of you have heard me talk about that word. And one of the definitions of it is destroy in any way. Well, they were destroyed in the way that the world would see them as being destroyed. It was claimed that they were charlatans, so that even what they were saying was wrong. And in the eyes of the students that were following them in 1975, in October, since they said that they would experience, they thought that they would actually be martyred, and as a demonstration of a resurrection that would be witnessed, and that's what they felt was going to happen at the time, and yet it didn't happen in that way. But they were very quick to say, well, after they felt like they were discredited, and they were in Las Vegas at the time, and they felt like there was no point of going on, and they were kind of depressed about that in October of 75. And so they all of a sudden both felt like we have to continue with this. And we'll go to the students and we'll tell them that our interpretation of what we thought was the demonstration. But they still didn't disqualify the possibility that they would be killed physically. Okay? They were just saying that what they thought was the demonstration was happening because the press was crucifying them. I mean, not crucifying them, but, but basically destroying their reputations. And they even said that, we can't go on because our reputations are destroyed. Because we were, Doe was a felon, and from, keeping that rental car too long and all that.
And the credit card, too.
And then they realized, wait a minute, our credibility is already destroyed. So they were actually following the prophecy in its more correct interpretation. And they were actually, like the two witnesses, actually, the word witnesses is Marduk or something like that. Maybe not Marduk, because I know that's another part of Judeo-Christian record books. Or maybe it's Egyptian. I'm not sure. I don't remember that well. But where that word comes in. But it stems from the word martyr. Okay? And they were martyrs, actually. They put themselves up front, saying, we're from the next level above human. And then everybody that saw them do that, except for the few that believed them, potentially, were shooting them down.
Yeah.
And they were literally destroyed from being anything, okay? But that was a blessing because they went to the students and they said, we think the demonstration was, shown as being destroyed by the press. Was not destroyed, but they didn't use that word, but being shot down by the press, the media. And that was the killing in the streets, so to speak, that was talked about in the prophecy. And so, and they said we would fully understand if you all didn't want to follow us anymore because we made such a big point out of this demonstration. And Doe said that when he said that to us, for the most part, the students said, well, let's go on with the next step. And I was one of those students that it didn't faze me at all because I wasn't there for them to prove to me that they were fulfillments of prophecy or not fulfillments of prophecy because I wasn't in tune with the prophecies. I didn't study that material at all. And so it didn't matter to me, even though I read those prophecies after I joined. And I thought, okay, if that's what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. And but everything that happened along the way for those years, even the things that changed, seemed to me to be, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? Because I recognized T and Do. Fortunately, I was given that gift of recognition, and I didn't let influences talk me out of it. And so anyway, I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Thank you. It's good to say such things, I think.
And in terms of T leaving ahead of Doe, that's actually in those record books as well. But I didn't know to look for it. I never did look for it until after I left and I was writing my book. And then I saw it in Revelation 12. Where Doe at one point said that T was the woman in Revelation 12. And that's all he said about it, really. But he did say the dragon was talking about Lucifer.
Well, in the HBO, I think you should, if you don't mind, talk on, like that last episode in that series where, Terry was talking about the letters that T had written her, and, Terry felt that T was, like, kind of talking in code, because I guess one of the letters, not I guess, but they showed it, that one of the letters said, conform to society, and Terry was like, that's, like, the last thing that, that goes totally against what the group was engaging in. To me, that just felt like Bonnie was telling Terry what she wanted to hear. And she wasn't trying to talk her daughter into being a part of the group that she was a part of. Terry seemed to feel, and probably still does, that T got in over her head. And that once she was in, and she was in so deep that she just, couldn't see a way out of it. When the reality is, and of course it's easy for me to say this because my mom didn't die without me knowing about it until almost a year later. Like, I can imagine that's very hard to... Sawyer and I have actually argued about this, like, I felt like Terry, of course, can say whatever she wants and speak her truth. I would imagine it would be very hard to accept that my mom didn't want to tell me that she was dying, that she did not want me near her, that it would be easier to blame somebody else for that instead of my mom.
There you go. Where Doe actually said that the reason he didn't tell Terry was because one of T's last wishes before she left her vehicle was to not tell Terry.
Yeah.
I mean, directly, not tell Terry. And Doe told us that right after that, when after T left, and he told us that with Liv Odie and Jen already present, and they were present when T was, saying that to Doe.
Right.
Because they were taking care of her.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any reason to believe Doe would make any of that up. There's no reason for him to make that up, because it makes him look bad.
Terry talked about how she was less than 4 hours away from where T's vehicle, left this planet, and that she was so close. And don't we know that T knew exactly where Terry was? So if she wanted her to come, she would have called for her.
Yep.
And I think Terry might think that she wasn't allowed to.
Right, because she talked about how T called her one time and said that Doe was on the other phone. Herf, as Terry knew him as Herf.
Because that was his middle name.
Was on the other phone, and she felt like she was talking in code because of Doe somehow. I mean, she was thinking that like Doe was in control of her or something like that. It's funny that that Terry takes that slant while the media takes the slant that T was controlling Doe.
Right.
And then the media also takes the slant that Doe was being controlled because he didn't have a good relationship with his human father.
Right, and he was
over the topic of homosexuality. And so he was trying to please his father, and that's why he was always getting emotional when he would talk about T as his heavenly father. And there was some kind of transference there. He was trying to please his human father in some way. They're making all these twists and turns. And it's like, holy smokes. Well, humans do that. So
Yeah.
especially when they're trying to justify something. And the
just
psychologists
don't
all get together, and it's like Freud saying that everybody's in love with their mother and father.
With their mom and dad, yeah. Ew.
Because he probably was, and so he thinks everybody's like that. Boy.
Nasty old man.
Yeah, the little things that we weave among ourselves,
I think there's a lot of comments to get to,
There
right?
There are.
You gotta scroll it up. Sorry, we haven't.
I did. I went to Facebook
Oh,
first, though.
we got. Who's gonna do the count? Oh God, it's 2 minutes. It's the last 2 minutes of 2022.
Happy New Year, Cathy Wiles.
Well, it's
On
not
Facebook.
really New Year yet. We should
Well,
do
but she just said that, so I'm responding ahead of time. Let's see. No twerking is going to happen, that's for sure. There's no pot in the next level. But do what you want to do here.
Hello, Jeffrey Haggy.
Love you both, says Paladin. Probably don't need it, the pot.
Wait, you're skipping over a lot of stuff.
No, I already went through those.
Well, I haven't.
I haven't
So
skipped
Jeffrey Haggy says Happy New Year.
All right, now you're starting from down below.
No, I'm starting at the very beginning.
XF said, you're wearing those banana-colored sweatpants again. Cool, haha, just jiving.
Yes,
That's
yes.
right, they are those banana-colored sweatpants.
At one point, he had a duct tape on the knees. But
Yeah, I did. I took it off, though. See?
Showing a little skin there. Paladin says, I hope you're both happy, healthy, and at peace. I guess we are.
Yeah.
I Need a Nap says, we are on a plane, not a planet.
On a plane, not a planet. All right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cole Morgan, hello. And hello, I Need a Nap. And hello, Paladin. Cole Morgan says, I thank Father Doe every day for allowing me to find you guys. That's
Cool.
sweet. Thank you. We're
Yeah.
grateful for that as well. RTT, hi all. Hope the good vibes are flowing. I think, oh my God, it's 2023. Happy New Year! Did you drink all that coffee? Oh, you're gonna... Happy New Year! Oh my God, fireworks are guns. When we were kids, we used to go, we would grab pans with spoons, and we'd go run up and down the street. And there's
That's what everybody's doing right now, right?
Yeah,
They're not even listening to us anymore. They're all outside. They're blowing up fireworks.
There's gunshots, because you're not allowed fireworks in the park.
But, is that what that is? Gunshots?
I think so.
Jeez, how many people in these?
We are in South Carolina, and I bet a lot of people have guns in motorhomes.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Matthew Carey says hello. Good to see you live.
Yeah, we don't have guns. We just have bazookas.
We don't have bazooka. What are you talking about? We don't have shit.
We want to make sure that
we have lots of guns.
Someone comes after us that we're gonna blow their whole car away. I'm only joking.
Yes, we have lots of guns.
There's water guns. Squirt, 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 squirt.
God, we don't even have that.
We do up there.
Oh, we have a spray bottle for Evie when she gets out of line, but she knows we have it, so, like, she stopped acting like a bitch. Just funny, it's like right when I bought it, Evie was like, meh.
Evie's Cathy's cat. We don't have a child running around here.
That I squirt with a spray bottle.
Right.
Although I would. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think I ever squirted my kid. El Guro says, Happy New Year. Boozer is here. Happy New Year.
That's El Guero.
Sorry, El Guero. Welsh Dragon Studios, hello. Hello to Jason. Hello, Matthew Carey. I know, I wanted to say hello to everybody.
Oh, okay.
I think those are fireworks.
Probably.
So everybody on the East Coast,
who's going to catch them, right?
New Year's. We should have had the little ball going on the TV. And then,
I had some sparklers at one point.
I did too, but we did them all last year, remember?
Oh, that's right, we did. We did blow up those sparklers. Yeah.
That's fun. Okay, now let's read what XF says.
Go back to XF. Documentaries are put Heaven's Gate in the same basket as Jonestown, Davidians, and Manson family. That's false.
That's what they did.
Then they paint the world as right. But wasn't it the world that drove people to these cults to begin with?
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, to some degree, I guess, right? I mean, when you see I don't know, I wasn't driven to be a part of T and O's group because of the world's bad behavior. I did recognize the world's bad behavior. In fact, I tried to move to Canada to get socialized medicine and also to escape the fact that the United States was always at war.
Trying to draft you.
Yeah, well, I got a high draft number, so I didn't really have to go, but I was looking at going to Canada before I got that high number, and so I ended up going to Canada anyway. I moved there, so, so I wasn't really trying to get away from the world, but that's what was happening. I just felt like Doe talked about, there were some people that just can't fit in. You don't want to make you don't have the effort, you don't have the desire to try to, climb the social ladder or the career ladder or the family ladder or, or whatever it is. Or, and you just, you look through alternatives and eventually, what?
Just all those big booms outside.
Yeah.
It's strictly coming from this RV park. Like, there's nothing else around here. Like, nothing.
There's some kind of corporation over there, though. They're still building it, I think.
They just barely broke ground.
There's the KOA people. They're probably shooting off fireworks.
And they do have, like, a little bar type setup in the KOA. So
yeah, they sell beer and stuff.
Yeah.
So people can whoop it up over there, or they can buy the beer and then go use it. And some of these trailer parks, RV parks, whatever you want to call them, they even have like a bar.
Straight up bar. The last one we were at in Florida, straight up a bar, Rustler's Roost or something, I think it was called. And there was like one of the people had this little sign out that said, what was it? Something about drunk campers?
I don't remember what it said. But I know what you're
It's
talking
like
about.
Drunk campers are people too or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Watch out for drunk campers.
Yeah, right.
And then the first night that we were there, yeah, everyone was whooping it up there.
Yeah, but which we don't really want to get involved with.
We haven't talked to anybody here. Well, we talked to one guy that was fishing. Holy shit.
Jeez, that was close. That sounded like a gun.
We talked to one.
Yeah, that's a gun.
That's a gun.
That's not a firecracker, I don't think. Because if it was a cherry bomb, it would be even deeper than that, I think. But you can hear like the echo of it, seems like. Oh my gosh, we better put our shields up. We've got shields, by the way. They're force fields. So we can just turn it on and we get a force field around the whole motorhome.
What is going on with you?
I hope none of those bullets come through that window, that force field, you know.
Right. Well, we'll be suing somebody. Jesus.
We'll hit the ground, that's for sure.
These people are wilding out. I bet they're back by the lake. That's where it sounds like. They're out in the woods shooting towards the lake, hopefully.
Yeah. You're right, to shoot the alligators. Poor alligators. You know, can't have any peace. We should have a sign, alligator rights.
Yeah, right?
The rights to not be interrupted in the middle of the night by gunfire.
Luckily, it's just one night, and it's only just at midnight, you know? It's not like 4th of July, which is, oh my God.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, though, there, XF, you know, and why do you think, he says, why do you think a bunch of these people end up in cults, ? The world treated them like garbage, and yet these false Heaven's Gate docs paint the world as a paradise. Yeah, a paradise for the lower forces. Well, the one thing I want to say about that, in addition, is that I believe Tiendo felt like the reason why people were gravitating towards alternative ways of living, like communally, and gravitating towards people that had something spiritual to say, that was like new information in a sense, a new interpretation of things, different religions than the Judeo-Christian that many people were brought up with, in the United States especially, and was because the next level was stimulating the bringing together to the United States a melting pot. And then when Tiendo were about to come public, they were the whole time in the 1900s especially, but also the 1800s and before that as well. The next level was preparing vehicles to be the recipients of returning souls, like I talked about in the last live stream, so that those vehicles could be taken over by souls that had been through experiences with older members in the past, and so knew what to expect. And so one of the things to expect was
we're able to move into it.
People leaving everything behind, in fact, not identifying with their human family as much as identifying with people that believe the same things that they believed, which was the next level family that Tiendo were teaching people that they were becoming a part of, which was, and what Jesus talked about that too. And this is not putting down the human family, because it's not about that. But look at how many people actually grow up in a family, and for whatever reason want to go out on their own. Okay, some of those people don't have something that glues them to the family. Like, for instance, let's say you grow up in a family where your parents have a really successful business, and they're just going to give it to you and, you know, hand it over to you and say, okay, you can work this business and you can make a good livelihood, and, you know, you can support a family, you could still go to school, and, you know, whatever you want to do, you can do whatever you want to do. Or you can just live off, become somebody that's associated with the arts because I can pay for your art school, and you know, and then all of a sudden they feel like they owe their parents something for giving them all that, and so that can be the case for a lot of people. But then that can also be the situation that somebody grows up into, to where they start in that direction of kind of fulfilling their parents' wishes for them.
Yeah.
And then they realize that this isn't really fulfilling to me, and they go in their own direction. So they're breaking away from that unit, okay? And a lot of people do that. And instead of like staying within that same town and, and where their parents grew up. And I'm not saying that that can't be as much of a growth path as anything else, but the people that join cults were searching for something. And they can have all different reasons. It doesn't really matter, but it's something, they're not finding satisfaction with whatever they have. And so I don't think it's just a matter of that they hate the world, because the world offers a lot of things, aside from, believing in the government and all that, even though that's part of it. That's part of the world, is to put your faith and trust in the government and authorities in the government and the intellectualism of the government and and there's a lot of people that are in that mode.
Yeah, that's a big thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, to where if you do anything or say anything or think differently than your party or the government by and large, then like they would say to the people that didn't want to go fight in the Vietnam War when I was a contender for being drafted, they would say, "Love it or leave it.
Well,
get out of here.
You're a traitor."
Right, you're a traitor, and you ought to be shot.
Well, and even with this past election, government. Like everyone was saying, oh, if, well, I guess not this past election, but the one before then, like, oh, if Donald Trump wins, then I'm moving, and I don't think any of those people moved.
Yeah,
but
right.
It was just like, if it doesn't turn out my way, then I'm gonna jump ship. I'm gonna leave.
Yeah, which is kind
And a lot of people said if he does become president, I'm leaving.
Yeah, right.
If he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of them did, right? Who knows? But I bet you, Cathy's right, that there's probably few that did for that reason, because they had other ties. Maybe they ended up waking up to that there's no president that's going to solve these problems.
They're all shitheads.
They're all like in bed with the lower forces. Even though there can be, because Doe talked about how there were different space alien groups, that some of them had a little better agenda, closer to next level. I'm not sure if I'm saying it the best way, but the next level was using because it could help some people. But I think, like about Ross Perot, they used that example, that there was a space alien group that was supporting him, even though he wasn't really talking about next level behaviors and ways. He was bringing a certain amount of better behavior, potentially.
In the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning. And so T and Doe felt like we should support him. And we did a little bit just by watching him and having thoughts about him and talking about him. And so that was supporting him, because T and Doe said all along that we were putting out thoughts, and depositing thoughts was a big part of the task. And that's still happening.
Your strain.
Everybody is depositing thoughts. We're not just the only ones depositing thoughts.
Yeah, you guys are too.
Right, but what kind of thoughts are we depositing? When we're thinking that T and Doe have something to say that's true, we're depositing those thoughts. And somebody else can hear those thoughts if they've got any kind of a thirst, and they can say, hey, I wonder if that was right, you know? I wonder if they were right. And go look into it a little bit. So, but also we're depositing thoughts more directly when we're actually showing our belief to people, or being willing to talk about Tiendo in a positive way if the circumstance arises.
Yeah.
You know, but of course that's going to be seen as a negative by a lot of people. And hopefully, well, I'll just go on in the chat
What
room.
about Facebook, babe?
Well, Welsh Dragon's been here for a while. And he said that as someone who makes documentaries, it is very easy to tell the story you want to tell. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. They cut and pasted the order of things that I said in a way that took the context totally out of it. And the context didn't tell the story that I was trying to tell. And so, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, Welsh Dragon. I've experienced it many times with the media. There's nothing new on Facebook, so I'll go back over to Booser. HNY. Happy New Year. Okay. Saw cat and all. Happy New Year to you. I hope it's a great New Year for you all.
This time last year, I just had my journal out because I wanted to finish up the last page in it, but I looked at what we were doing this time last year, January 1st, and you and I were trying to buy that house in New Mexico. Can you imagine if we... God, that house was so cool, though.
That house with that statue of Buffalo Bill, was it? Bill
Wild
Cody?
Bill Cody?
Yeah. Wild Bill Cody. With his hat on and big life-size statue.
It was
Out
literally...
of bronze or something.
It was literally like a time capsule, this house was. It was so beautiful. But it had a lot of problems, and we didn't have anywhere near the kind of money that house needed.
Right, we would have been like, oh gosh, if we
would have been camping out in the living room.
Literally, right, because
we would have got our heads snapped off by the electric garage opener that didn't work and was about to break.
Yeah.
Everything, like, there was an evaporative cooler system, which would have probably not really stood up that well. We would have probably been living in like one room. There was electricity, but I don't even know if it had Wi-Fi. We didn't even ask about that.
No, they did have it.
Did they?
Yeah.
It had an intercom system that it was just...
We don't know if it worked or not.
No, we would have, and it had a built-in stereo system.
Yeah,
it was really cool, but you would have had to have probably had about $1 million, honestly. The electric system alone would have been $50,000.
Yeah.
Because the electric was, the walls were concrete. And so we would have had to, like, just to bring the electric up to code, to have a up to code panel.
The conduit would have to be on the outside of the house.
Yeah, the outside, or they would have had to, like, bust it into the walls. And we talked to the same electrician that had dealt with the group, actually.
Which was very interesting.
And we don't know if, like, he told us that stuff to run us away, because by that time, the people that owned the land that the Earthship is on had already turned against us and called the cops, unbeknownst to us. We didn't realize that they had done that. They'd had a meeting with the sheriff, a sheriff's deputy out at their property, and given them...
Even though all we wanted to do was take pictures of the Earthship.
Yeah, they flipped out and called the cops, even though we hadn't even done anything. But so...
After they encouraged us to be in touch with them and come to their property...
There was probably less than 200 people in this town.
Then they did a switch. right when COVID hit.
Yeah, so there's
Or not.
probably like less than 20 cops on the police department there, and they knew our names. So it was like, shit, that's probably not a good way to enter into a town.
A
so
tiny town.
it felt almost kind of like when the electrician didn't get back to me for weeks either. And then finally, he didn't even go into the house. Like, he had already been there and given a estimate to another person that had wanted to buy the house. And so he told us what he told us.
So he did us a favor, actually.
But at the same time, it's like, well, what if all that was just to get us not to come into the community? But he did do us a favor, because it's like a Stephen King novel. When the bullies of the town are against you from the get-go, do you really want to, anytime we would have had any problems, we couldn't get a plumber out there. Like, nobody would work with us. And now we know why, but at the time we didn't. It was just like, why the hell aren't these people calling us back? Like, what the hell?
Well, they said there was a shortage of all those people because of COVID, right?
Well, and the plumber kept saying, like, he was sick, his son was sick, that was his partner in the business. Like, there was all these excuses. It's like, can you please just go over there and turn the damn water? Can we turn the damn water on so we can see? The water in that property hadn't been turned on in probably over 20 years, though. So that system alone, it was honestly a nightmare in the making. And we're not do-it-yourselfers as far as a big, huge property like that goes. I can't remember how many square feet it was, but that kind of let us know that wasn't the way to go.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's what we were doing this time last year.
We were thinking, because I had been thinking for years that if I was going to go someplace, I would go to New Mexico and,
it's so beautiful there.
And be, like, make a base near the Earthship.
Right, and there was a courthouse, so the building right next to it was owned by the same individual. And a couple other buildings in town, actually. So there was a courthouse that was right next to it. So we were going to get this property for $100,000.
And we didn't have to pay anything up front.
$100,000. And then the property next door was $75,000.
Except fixing it, of course.
Right, except for fixing it. So we were like, they should pay us $100,000. But that is cheap.
But then we had 5 years, we had to pay it all off.
Or we had to pay X amount. So within our plan was we would get a traditional loan within that time frame to carry the rest of it.
So we could have got in there probably.
We did have to come up with $20,000, which we were going to do by.
I had ways of doing that.
Going into debt, borrowing on credit cards and whatnot. We were going to pull it out. But then, it was like, so we're going to get in there and we're not going to have enough electricity to plug our stuff in, like, yes, the lights were coming on when we did the walkthrough, but that might be all.
But some of the switches weren't working.
There were outlets hanging out of the wall. And then, to find, like the HVAC system was not anywhere near. And then the garage, and then
the plumbing, the electric, everything was wrong with the place. Or we didn't know because they didn't turn things on. So it's
we couldn't turn things on because the plumber
we were
wouldn't
pretty
show up.
stubborn about. We
spent $400 on an inspection, but since I declared bankruptcy, we didn't have to pay that.
Yeah, and we also spent like $700 staying in town so that we could have the inspection done. God, staying in a hotel in Albuquerque
and working Uber to see, if we could actually work. Albuquerque's a dump. It is the worst place to live. Like, I don't know if you'd ever seen some of the stuff that we saw. That woman flopping around in the road, high on whatever.
Yeah, well,
armed guards at the grocery store at night.
Yeah.
Like, the people that owned the property where the Earthship was had moved there because they were sick of, like, helicopters flying overhead saying, stay in your homes. Like, Albuquerque is probably one of the most dangerous cities outside of El Paso.
And Chicago and New York.
Ugh, God, Chicago.
Right. I mean, I don't know how it compares with them, but it's probably, who knows.
Like when you see cops in Albuquerque, you're happy. And that is a weird way to feel.
Not that cops are bad.
No,
that,
but usually you're like, oh shit, the cops, like we're doing something wrong, even though we're not.
Right. Right. And it's like anything. There's ones that are good and better, and there's ones that are corrupt, and the whole system is corrupt anyway. And so, not that there's not a time when you're really welcome to see a police officer. I've had that experience. And
yeah, me too. When my house was, people
Yeah.
tried to break in my house and
yeah.
do bad things to my daughter and I.
Okay, well, it looks like Facebook, pretty much everybody's vacated from Facebook.
They're all out there shooting guns.
But apparently there's still 11 individuals at least have their app on here. Just went down to 10 when I said that. Happy New Year, Tara Ben.
Happy New Year.
David Bannister.
Hey, I haven't seen that name for a little while.
Booser. Already said something to Booser. Matthew Carey. Jason Holez.
Yeah.
Sidster Cats.
Hey, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Thanks for joining us.
Jailer EU. Happy New Year. Does that mean you're actually that's your job? You're a jailer in the European Union? Anyway.
Happy New Year to you.
Maybe, Project Carthage says Happy New Year, Sawyer and Cathy.
Happy New Year to you.
Same to
Thank
you.
you for joining us.
Jailer EU. What an interesting story. Jailer EU doesn't want to kill myself at all. Yeah, isn't that funny that, nothing we say here should make somebody want to kill themselves. Doe didn't want people to kill themselves. That's why he put on the website, which they actually showed in the HBO Max at the very bottom of the website. The last thing that shows up when they're scrolling down is the document that says our position against suicide.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, we should, state a disclaimer like we were a lot better about that when we were, that we are against suicide. We're not forming a new Heaven's Gate group. We're not trying to convince anybody to leave their vehicles or, come follow us or, we're not doing any of that. There's no new group. We, I think I can speak for both of us. I did it. They're all swatched. We just want to tell people, well, Sawyer wants to tell people his experience in the group and the truth of it. And together, we just want to tell people about T and Doe and the next level and what they actually believed and what the crew, the class, believed and what they were doing. That's why
Yeah, because there's a lot to it.
we do what we do.
It's a huge story that still hasn't really been told that much. But we can all find out about it ourselves. Nobody needs us for doing it, but
That's right.
we can
There's
help
enough
with it.
information left behind that
Yeah.
you can find it on your own.
But there's a lot of information to absorb, and so if we can, I think we can help by, addressing questions that people have. That because we continue to study the information.
Look how beautiful that is. Just a simple swatch sheet. Ooh, tomorrow we're leaving here and heading back down into
So Jailer EU says,
Georgia. We're pretty happy about that. Right?
yes. He says, what about it works for you? It just makes sense to us. I mean, it's not just makes sense to us.
Everything? No.
It seems like that everything that T and Doe said was in the process of showing what's real, what exists beyond the human kingdom, and beyond this planet, in terms of the reason for this planet's existence, and the reason why we exist, human
Right.
vehicles exist, animals exist, plants exist on this planet. That's none of that's happenstance, and we believe that is the case. We feel like we know that from before we even. I think Cathy believed that before she even heard about Tiendo in some way, shape, or form. I did, but I didn't really think about it. It just makes sense to me when I heard Tiendo talking about it that was all true. And everything else they said too, that discarnates are a reality. Humans when they die, the spirit of that human continues to have an existence. It's not life really, but it's an existence, and that souls are real, but they are given to human vehicles by the next level in order to provide an opportunity for those vehicles to have a relationship with a returning soul from a previous time. So the reincarnation idea, to some degree, not like the religions teach it, but has a reality to it. I believed that before, and I believe that now. And Tiendo talked about it in ways that made scientific sense to me. I really liked the whole scientific view of it, because
I do too.
the religions were, like too strict in their. Some of them were better than others. Some of the different sects of Christianity were more realistic in terms of how there really isn't a difference between evolution and the kingdom of God's relationship with the planet. The kingdom of God is a many-membered kingdom, and they have physical bodies, and they use physical spacecrafts, and they designed humans to look the way we do and to act the way we do, because this could be an area where we could grow to become like them. It's not like coincidental that members of the next level are humanoid looking in their vehicles, at least the vehicles that we've been shown by Tiendo are vehicles, that next level members occupy, take over, like a suit of clothes, but that they wear for periods of time to do tasks with. And they can have different kinds of vehicles, different shapes, different colors, but they don't have gender. And they don't have sexuality, because that's not part of their kingdom. Just like animals in the animal kingdom don't have the ability to have an intricate language. They have their own form of language, but it's not nearly as sophisticated as the human language, because they don't need it. But in the next level, they don't need reproduction, because any new members that come into their kingdom is because they offered that help.
I think something good to say, you'll have to repeat this, is that a cat from America could talk to a cat in China.
Cathy says that a cat from America can talk to a cat from China. True.
Or a dog, or a horse.
True. Well, humans can too, though, in that way.
But
like,
I'm just saying, there's separate languages for each region. Like Chinese have Chinese.
but the cats probably speak the same language, no matter where they're from, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's my point.
But humans also can speak that same cat language. Like, for instance, let's say you get hurt, you cry. Every human knows that language of what someone is hurt, right?
Yeah. Well, like that movie we just watched, Stargate.
Yeah, Stargate. We just saw that. I saw it for the first time. It came out in 1994. I don't know if the class ended up watching it.
I think it was I don't know if it was 94 or on, with that group of people that were on a different planet, they were able to communicate with.
Right. But the one guy had to work at it in order to learn to communicate in their language, and he was a linguist, so he picked up on things very quickly to where he could start to communicate with somebody.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if that's realistic really, but because how long it would take if you moved, if somebody moved to France or Germany and all they had was exposure to the English language, then how long would it take them to actually be able to communicate? Sure, they would learn a lot of the key words that were the most necessary words to have. But could they have a real in-depth conversation? It'd be very difficult. It'd be very difficult. But see, members of the next level communicate by thought. So humans also have the capacity to communicate by thought, but we don't. But it's not accurate because we don't have the ability to
Excuse me.
know that we're correctly receiving what the other person is putting out by thought alone. But I mean, we can use body language. We can use, little things that people say. Of course, body language in terms of emotions and expressions of emotion, and also the frown on our face or whatever. So we communicate a lot that way. But I guess my point is that one difference between the next level and the human kingdom is that the next level doesn't need body language to communicate their thoughts. Not that they don't have some of that, some of them, but that's the reason why Tiendo had us try to focus on what needed to be said, so there's not a lot of static, and also to not just project our thoughts when they're not asked for.
Yeah.
Because if you were like they said that, let's say the next level allowed humans to graduate into the next level, okay, with the vehicle or as a soul graduating into it to where they would put that soul in a new vehicle. Okay, so let's say they were there, but the soul didn't have the experience of learning to restrain itself for the thoughts that it would have. And so Tiendo said that in the beginning, they would be fascinated with everything that was happening in the next level laboratories on board spacecrafts that could be as big as a planet, okay, but then after a while, as they were observing things, because the beginning of any lab activity is to be an observer. You don't get to have hands-on experience until you've taken in what was happening to some degree, and to where you understand it and you start to, be able to receive instructions so that you can do little minor tasks at first and things that weren't going to upset the whole program, whatever was going on in any project. Anyway, so what Tiendo said was that pretty soon after the newness wore off, if an individual wasn't restrained, they'd start to make suggestions on how they could be doing it better or differently, more efficiently. And the next level members don't want to know that from a baby. It's like a baby saying, "Oh, Daddy, I know how to do that. Why don't you just saw it this way instead of that way?" And your daddy would think, if I did it the way you said, I'd probably cut my arm off. But the baby doesn't know that. Or the little small child that thinks they know so much. Which anybody that's raised children knows that, especially at 2 years old and stuff, sometimes they can be pretty full of themselves. And there's a lot of humans that are really full of themselves to where they think they know exactly what's true about this and not true about that. And they speak with authority, like those consultants that were used in the Heaven's Gate Max documentary that Cathy and I just watched over again. And Cathy watched it for the first time in full, the 4 episodes. They constantly went to Hassan and Lalich and I don't know, Rob Balch and Ben Zeller, and of them, Balsh had some good things to say, and Zeller had some good things to say, but Hassan and Lalich, I don't know if they had anything good to say.
Well, and Ben Zeller has a lot of key things wrong.
Yes.
And he says it like, oh, the group believed XYZ. It's like, no, they did not.
Right.
So stop saying that.
He had some misconceptions, but at least he was open to, when I had the conference with him that he was invited me to, open to hearing what I had to say about it. So, whether he believed it or not, he was allowing me to have the time to speak about it. So I really was thankful for that. But some of the other ones, like Hassan, talks like he really knows, what the signs of brainwashing are, and how these individuals were brainwashed. And Lalich too. These individuals were brainwashed to death, and and then they use all their examples that they have of brainwashing, and they're actually displaying being totally brainwashed to think that they know so much about it when they don't. They don't. It's a plain fact that they don't. But I can give you all the reasons, but I'm not going to spend time trying to, use that right now because my blog is kind of full of things like that. But there's so many documents on the blog that I can't blame anybody for not wanting to wade through them all. Okay, so what are you drawing, says Jailer EU. Cathy's coloring.
Yeah, I don't draw, but I like to color, so this is what I'm...
Let me see if that's showing. Okay.
Working on right now. I've been coloring her skin. I'm just adding shading now.
And let's see.
I did not draw that. It's from an artist called Hannah Carlzon. I might be able to draw that, though.
I bet you could.
I bet I could.
But Jailer EU says, but when you do, what does it ever do when you go to then it does go? Let's see, let me read that again. First he said, what about it works for you? But when you do, what does it ever do when you go to then it does go? I'm sorry. Then he goes on to say, I'm starting to feel bad. God bless you. Okay, do you guys have any New Year's resolutions? I haven't
I think,
done that.
yeah, I haven't done New Year's resolutions. But I think what we both want and to have more events like the one we just had in Savannah, to bring the information to as many people as possible that want to hear, to just continue in the same vein that we have been. I would say a New Year's resolution would be to win this lawsuit and be able to play tapes again.
Mm-hmm.
To not have to worry about Mark and Sarah on our backs.
Yes.
To be able to disseminate the information like we've all been tasked to do.
Yes. What do you think about, he says Stargate is great. What do you think about Blade Runner? I don't remember it that well.
Yeah, we might watch that.
But the Stargate, I hadn't seen it before. And one of the things I liked about it was that when they showed that Stargate, right away when I recognized that, when they sent that robot into it, and they said that they tracked it to being in another part of the universe after that, I reflected on how T and Doe said in 1975 that there were highways in the heavens, and there were certain ways that the next level had to travel great distances faster, and that they could even exceed the speed of light. So that Stargate idea was doing that. And also I reflected on when Bob Lazar talked about how that there was transportation from one area of the heavens to another that wasn't linear. So that it was like a grid system in a sense, that you could bend time and space, so it's like a waveform. And so that if you looked at the tops of the wave, those waves could be drawn in such a way to where they actually come together at the top of the wave, so that the linear distance that you would take to follow that wave all the way around was millions and millions and millions of miles, light years of travel time, even by the speed of light, of course, but that if you got to that spot on the top of it, you could just hop over to the other spot in space. And Bob Lazar was talking about that, and he made a video that was drawing those diagrams of that waveform as a grid pattern. And so that kind of that happened in 1990s when we became aware of Bob Lazar's experience when he was, you can look up his experience, but so it was verifying that there was a way to travel from one part of the universe to another very quickly. So discounting what people would say that aliens can't be here because they couldn't live long enough. Well, first of all, you don't know how long somebody can live in a vehicle. I mean, we have records that say that people were living in 900 and 1,000 Earth years at some point, okay? I don't know if that was accurate, but that was talked about as Earth years that was measured by the sun, the Earth going around the sun. So I suspect that that's possible. And Doe said that the vehicles that the space aliens had, the ones that were called in the record books the fallen angels, lasted a lot longer than human vehicles do now. So to me, that was another little clue that, really humans that say that aliens couldn't be here for whatever reasons are shooting down both those theories. And so that was one thing that was good about the Stargate, in my mind. It was verifying things that T and Doe had said. It was showing that the humans were aware of that kind of, which are wormholes they were talking about, or black holes, which was the Contact movie was all about that, right? Going through and all of a sudden showing up in another spot in the universe.
Yeah.
And so XF97 says Steve Hassan can only speak for his experiences in the Moonies. Right. He has no right to try to define Heaven's Gate because he wasn't there, nor does he support it. So the man is not qualified to assess. Well, you got a point there.
I think he feels like he's qualified because he worked with Dan Sodi.
Right. Right, because Dan Sodi was distraught about his conflict that he had being outside the class. And I experienced that with Dan Sodi. I met with him in 1995 in Sedona, Arizona. And he was living there, and he was crying on my shoulder because he didn't feel like he fit anywhere. And I couldn't really help him, because, Doe talked about that it's very hard to leave the classroom and not flip to being against the classroom or negative about the classroom. And Dan Sodi did somewhat of a flip to where he was thinking that Doe got off track, if I remember correctly. He's left his vehicle now, been some years ago, related to AIDS. And
Well, what he said, or what they showed us in the HBO thing, was that he said that T and Do weren't conning anybody. If anything, they'd con themselves.
right, right, which but he also said that at one point Do said to him that he couldn't be a helper because the helpers lived with Do in the same house. And I mean, he was a helper actually at one point for a long time actually, when they were living in the Black Hawk craft. He was among 5 or 6 or 7 others that was living in that same house with T and Do, taking care of all the chores that needed to be done every day.
Right, so, and what they said on the HBO special was that he was a helper after T was gone.
He was. He actually traveled in a motorhome with Do, and I think Junodi was his partner. That's what I remember.
Yeah,
for a short
they made
time.
It sound like that was the only time that he was,
Right. It wasn't the only time.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that they state as a fact when they're not right about it, and I know that as a fact because of my own experiences. But Do said to me, I think at one point, that one of the reasons I wasn't assigned to be a helper was because he was trying to protect himself from because he knew his vehicle. He didn't say he was attracted to my vehicle, but he might have been to some degree. And Dan Sodi, I think to some degree, might have been attracted to my vehicle as well. But because Dan Sodi's vehicle was attracted to, he was in a male vehicle and he was attracted to male vehicles. And so Dan Sodi, according to the documentary, was devastated by Do taking him off the helper task for that reason. And I don't doubt that Do might have told him that because of what I believe Do told me. So I guess, I don't know, it didn't do anything to me when he told me that. There was a part of me that was, my human part of me was a little bit relieved because being with Do was not easy because of not knowing what, was being open to, laying yourself open to the standards that Do had. The influences don't want to be around Do. And so if you've got an influence with you, it was going to surface. And Do didn't really want individuals around him that were vibrating things that were going to put him to distract him from his task. And let's say his vehicle was attracted to Dan Sodi's vehicle, then that would be a distraction to have him around him. But I think what Do said to me was not that he was attracted to my vehicle, but that he was surrounding himself with Liv Odie and Jan Odie because his vehicle didn't have any attraction to their vehicles. And I believe that was the case, in large part. Although Junodi was a helper also, but he chose. And Junodi had a hard time when she was taken off the helper task. And Do told us about this several times. He talked about it, and not a lot, but he said that Junodi went through a difficult period when she was taken off that task because she felt like she had failed. When the task wasn't that, somebody would always think that if you had a position to where you were working closer with T and Do, that you were special in some way, like you were a more advanced student. But as it turns out, the ones that were kind of closest to Tiendo in the beginning, in 75, that joined from LA area, most of them dropped out and even went against Tiendo in some ways, or against Do in their beliefs, like Kadodi. Flexodi didn't, but at the same time, she was kind of on the fence a little bit when I met with her in 1995 about who Tiendo were. But then, she came forward and said that, they were from another level above human. And so, I'm glad she maintained her. For her, it doesn't matter to me whether somebody believes or doesn't believe in Tiendo. But I think it's just, well, since I believe who they are, I think to believe in them is a huge positive for that soul's growth, even though it's a difficult growth. It's always difficult for everybody. It's never not difficult.
Yeah.
Because the human kingdom is a training ground to become an astronaut on next level spacecrafts and next level crews, and they have very high standards. But they have fun, and they have, I can go on and on. One thing leads to the next, right? But, so XF says, or Jailer says, best alien movie? Oh, Jailer EU says, if I remember correctly, Bob Lazar is my son. Is that right? That's interesting. Well, if you talk to him, if he really is yours, if you remember correctly, that's kind of strange. Anyway, then Jailer says, best alien movie, question mark, do you have any them Nikes? No, we don't wear any of those Nike sneakers. We're not trendy like that. Trying to...
Well, they discontinued them anyway.
Right. That's one of the things that the classroom, when they left, that kind of classroom wasn't offered. So to duplicate those things, I'm not saying it's not an option. There's anything wrong with doing that, but because I don't know what's right and wrong, and in terms of things like that. But to put too much focus on them, to me and to think that we're serving Tiendo if we decide to wear the same Nikes, that's not being in service to do that. Then again, it might stimulate somebody to say, oh, those are the same Nikes that the group wore, But if you want to do that, then I suggest getting some T-shirts that talk about what they believed. As a more direct way of trying to serve the next level. So XF says, hopefully 2023 brings a close to the lawsuit against you guys and Carlin. Hopefully justice favors the Heaven's Gate information. It is removed from those 2 wet noodles in Arizona and is made available totally. Yes.
That's what we're hoping too.
Jailer,
we know that no matter what they're going to appeal, whatever, if the decision is anywhere in our favor, that they're going to appeal it.
Probably.
Because they have the money to. So
right.
we're kind of mentally preparing for that.
But there is a difference between the way that they threatened to appeal in 1999, was it? But when they finally got that ruling through the settlement.
It would have been 99, yeah.
Right. So because the judge, Lisa Guy Shall, she was under pressure from the families of those that laid down their vehicles, wanting to get some of the funds and put the story to rest so that they could use those funds for burial costs or whatever. and also not have the story on their minds all the time, lingering. And so, and they were kind of hating what Mark and Sarah were doing by holding all that up.
Yeah.
According to Mark, actually said that in the article that he wrote in Bardo. Not he wrote, but he was interviewed for, in Bardo Methodology, the website, which you can go to my blog if you want to read my response to it, my critique of that article. It's very long, and but it's at my blog is sawyerhg, like in Heaven's Gate, .wordpress.com. I tried to give it my best shot at addressing all the responses that Mark had. Anyway, but
I gotta read that still. Worked on it really hard.
yeah, but I can understand that, I'm a little fearful that you're going to read it and see all the stuff that I wasted time on, maybe repeating some of the things over and over again.
That's okay, baby.
Anyway, so Jailer EU says T and Do, like TEA and DOUGH. And yeah, that's how you pronounce it, those words. But they came from the Sound of Music, where they're saying Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. And, T sounded like T, but it's spelled T-I or T-E. Originally it was spelled T-E, and then Do changed it to T-I, and then he said you could spell it either way, but let's just settle on using T-I. And Do was spelled like D-O-E, like a doe a deer, rather than dough as in the bread. Which was spelled D-O, like do.
Just do it.
Just do it, right? Just do it. Komoro Red says, Happy New Year, with an alien face, and then
Happy New
wishing
Year to
best
you,
health and happiness. Same to you.
Same to you. Thank you
Yes.
for joining us.
And Jailer EU says, what am I doing with my life? What the F?
I think that's a question everybody can ask themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we
just go through life blind, right? A lot of people, it's easier that way.
Yeah, sometimes, I don't know, maybe hearing this information is gonna, bring some curiosity to what are the things that T and O were teaching. There's no negatives in what they were teaching. Nobody's gonna be, well.
There were no negatives in what they were teaching.
No, there's no negatives in what they were teaching. Project Carthage says, to be frank, those Nikes go for ridiculous amounts on eBay now. So if you're wearing them nowadays, you got money.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, are they actually selling them? I mean, I see that. I've been told that they're selling for like 5 figures.
Well, yeah, because they discontinued them.
Right.
So if anybody has a pair of those, they are worth a lot of money.
But they must have had like thousands of copies of those.
I don't know.
That were originally made, right?
I don't know what the production was,
XF says, based on his research, Carlin wrote in his blog that Mark and Sarah committed perjury by issuing a flurry of takedown notices for materials they claim they owned when evidence suggests otherwise.
Well, we have to wait for a judge to rule on that, so...
Yeah, we know where he's coming from, and we're working together with Carlin, and there may be truth to that. The ownership, it's interesting that when Doe talked about ownership, he said that nobody on Earth owns anything.
Right, that they strived, yeah.
The next level provided everything for humans.
Yeah, we just listened to that in Beyond Human session 12.
Yes, and I've always felt that way. You
Well,
know,
it's
but
funny how Mark in the legal agreement that they wanted us to sign, like Mark wanted us to admit that he and the T-Law Foundation, specifically him, he was
mm-hmm.
listed, as the king, Mark King, that we had to acknowledge that he had, ownership over the material, and it's exactly the opposite of what Doe wanted.
Yeah, why would you even want somebody to declare that you are the owner of that material?
So stupid.
You know, one thing that's a huge fact in our favor in this lawsuit is that Mark and Sarah have zero documentation to show that Doe wanted anything copyrighted or trademarked.
Well, also what's interesting is they are not the authors of any of the stuff that they copyrighted and trademarked. They literally had no hand whatsoever in creating that material. None.
And they used the clause in the transfer of the copyrights from TOA. See, you automatically have a copyright when you actually create something. When you write something, or you paint something, or you do some musical, a song or something, automatically the person who made it has a copyright. Now, they can't really necessarily bring that to a court of law, to have something against somebody else that uses that same thing, unless they go to the copyright office of the government and they register a copyright. Okay, so there's different ways of doing that, and they use the work for hire. The work for hire was designed for situations when an employer hired somebody to do some kind of artwork, and then so then that employee, I think, could actually copyright that item, saying that it was a work for hire item for that employer. And that, I think, was the courts decided that that was a legitimate way. But in this case, there's no documentation that shows that T and Doe were employers of Mark and Sarah. So they can't claim that they were the artists for hire because they didn't create any of those things. Now, Alodi could claim that copyright of the artwork for the meeting script because he was given that task by T and Doe. But there's no documentation to that regard. Well, there is some documentation to that degree because there was a copyright taken out by the name Oliver Odenwood, which was the surname, or not surname, but the pseudonym for Alodi. He was also referred to as Oliver. And so there was a copyright for the artwork taken by him. Now, we don't know if there's any documentation that shows that that was transferred to Mark and Sarah. But we're going to try to find out if there was when the court finally starts us on the discovery process of the lawsuit.
Which apparently nothing is happening because they decided, I guess, to take a break from November 3rd, which was the last activity that Carlotti submitted some motions, and they still haven't been ruled on, so the judge took an extended break, apparently.
But even if the work for hire, that only pertained in terms of the Alodi's artwork to the copyright they took out on the picture of the older member. They called it the CBE, which stands for Celestial Being Entity. And but the other images some of them were trademarked, and we don't know which ones were trademarked except for the Heaven's Gate logo that has the Saturn rings in it. And the words Heaven's Gate were actually trademarked and copyrighted, by the way.
Which Mark and Sarah had nothing to do with that. They weren't in the group.
Right.
But they took it upon themselves to go ahead and basically steal all that material.
Right. So they may have illegally stolen that material. You know, by not having proper documentation, because apparently the Copyright Office doesn't really do a lot of checking.
Right.
They wait for people to sue each other.
Yep.
Before, you know, and then work it out in court. So basically, all you got to do is show them that you have something, and then send it to them. And I guess you got to swear that somebody else doesn't own it, which they do in a sense by the registration of it. They should, you're supposed to put who the author is, and they didn't do that for the CBE entity because Alodi was the author, and had the original copyright for that in 1992, I think, or before that even, and so they didn't put Oliver Odenwood on underneath the title of author in their registration of the CBE figure. So I think they got a lot to answer to in that to the courts. Maybe they could be you know, held for fraud for doing that, and because they knew that Alodi made that picture. I know that they knew that.
They testified to that in the case too.
Mm-hmm. So in our countersuit, we've got a lot to say, and that's building. Our case is still building, and we've got a lot to say about it. Now neither of us, Cathy and I, you know, take for granted that we can win this, because we just don't know what the lower forces can do to take twists and turns, you know, to try to get us on some, who knows.
Well, it's, you know, we're not attorneys, and the attorneys have been real, you know, backhanded, going so far as to try to disrupt my bankruptcy case, which has nothing to do with them. So was really deep in debt. Before this lawsuit even happened, I got really deep in debt, and I would have never thought that I would file for bankruptcy, but that seemed to be the smartest thing to do. And throughout the bankruptcy, my bankruptcy attorney, this is the only attorney I have, asked me if anybody else was suing me, or if I was suing anybody. So when Mark and Sarah sued us, we piggybacked onto that and countersued them, because that's within our rights to do. So I had to answer, yes, I am being sued, and I am suing them back. You know, I'm countersuing. And so I had to explain to my bankruptcy attorney that I was being sued by former members of the Heaven's Gate group, which they thought was quite interesting. But fast forward to my bankruptcy meeting with the trustee of the state of Indiana, which is where my bankruptcy is going through. And they have a meeting of what they call the meeting of the creditors. So any of the credit card companies that I was having the amount discharged from could show up and, you know, say she never intended to pay this stuff in the first place, or nobody showed up. None of, you know, Discover Card, Chase, Capital One, Citibank, Commerce Bank, none of those cards showed up, because this happens all the time. People run up debt and have, you know, bankruptcies. I've ruined my credit for the next 7 years, but whatever. I didn't need to be running up any more credit anyway. But guess who did show up to that telephone meeting? Mark and Sarah's attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Mark and Sarah's attorney showed up to my bankruptcy meeting and tried to trip me up,
mm-hmm.
and tried to basically get me in trouble with the trustee of the state of Indiana. So something that they had nothing to do with, they tried to fuck up. which this is the first time I've talked about it. I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of talking about it and trying to use that against me later in court. But they showed up to my bankruptcy meeting, and he was trying to trip me up, and luckily my lawyer stepped in and advised me to answer the questions that he was asking. Otherwise, he could have made a motion to have my entire bankruptcy proceeding discharged, to have all of it, so the money that I spent on the bankruptcy attorney and, trying to get out of debt would have been completely ruined.
A couple thousand, right?
2,000.
Yeah.
We spent, which we did not have. We went into debt to spend that.
Right. And it was completely malicious.
And my attorney immediately called me after the phone call was over and said, "You did good." And they were clearly just being jerks. They had no reason to show up to that and to try to trip me up like he was trying to do, because he wanted to file, and she said he probably will file, just seeing what she saw in that brief conversation that we had with him, that he would probably try to file something stating that, I didn't have any intention of paying them, or they haven't even won a judgment against us. And even if they do win against us, I hope I'm not wrong, but I don't think the court is going to say, yeah, Cathy and Sawyer, you got to pay them over $75,000, even though you made no money from playing the audio tapes. You made less than $40 profit on shirts. Yeah, you got to pay them $75,000 for their pain and suffering and ruining their reputation. I don't think that that's what's going to happen.
Their reputation of lying and deceiving and manipulating people and us.
But that really, showed me where Mark and Sarah's heads are. They literally want to ruin our lives. It's personal. They could care less about the information and it getting out. They want to financially ruin. How are you going to come after somebody that's filing for bankruptcy, that clearly has no money, and then try to ruin my bankruptcy? You think I'm going to be able to pay you after that if you do win this case?
Right. That's why it's malicious.
But they did it because they wanted to hurt me.
Yeah.
It really, upset me quite a bit. I just couldn't believe that somebody would hate me that much simply for believing in tea and dough and for trying to tell everybody what they taught and trying to play audio tapes of them speaking. That's why I'm hated by Mark and Sarah King. It just blows my mind. It's so malicious. I've never ever,
of course,
in my entire life been so hated and reviled by somebody that it just is crazy. We all go through school and people are jerks and want to kick your ass or make fun of you and be mean to you, and maybe we have issues with our parents, but I've never ever been hated and treated the way that Mark and Sarah King have treated me. It just blows my mind that somebody would have that much hatred towards me for simply believing in tea and dough and trying to share their message. That's why they hate me.
And they hate Cathy also because they hate me.
Right.
And why do they hate me? Because I don't go along with them. I don't feel like I need them. And, to do the task, whatever task we do, for, I never felt like I needed to relate with them. And I wasn't against them when I first started to talk about the next level again in the early 2000s. Mark and Sarah sent me a case of the books that they published, we talk about as the purple books. and a bunch of Beyond Human tapes, a whole set of them. So they were, I guess, encouraging me to distribute those items. And I told them that I wouldn't sell them, but if I did, I would send them the money. And I think I sold one time.
You gave me one.
I gave some people them, and for maybe $20. I don't know. Actually, maybe not. I think I gave them away to a few people. Anyway, but then when I found out through Carlotti that they were holding back the audio tapes, and what had transpired with them against Rick Cody, and then filing a lawsuit against Rick Cody's daughter because Rick Cody left a bunch of things in Cathy, his
Don't say
daughter's
her
hands.
last name, yeah.
Right. Which I knew what was going on in 1997 because Rick Cody was telling me about it, and I actually talked with Mark on the phone about it, and they were gonna use me as like an arbitrator, and I really didn't want to have anything to do with it because I didn't really know what was right. I was, in a sense, I was a little bit thinking that Mark had a task, because he said he did, and I knew that he had some communication with T&O before they left, because I knew that from 1994 when they started to have more of a relationship in a little ways, and and I knew the things that Doe had said about trying to get them to trying to see if they wanted some service, that they refused. I knew about that because I was there when Doe was talking about it, even though I didn't really remember it until I re-listened to those tapes. But so anyway, because of that, and then because I had been following their interviews that they were giving through email, because they never gave any in-person interviews that I ever saw, or even audio interviews beyond the one that I think was recorded with what's his name, that radio host many years ago.
Art Bell?
Art Bell, yes. Which I never did hear the recording of that, if it exists. But anyway, they were doing interview with Gizmodo, and they were saying, when they started to say the things that T&O didn't teach, and then when they were asked why they left the group, and they gave some stupid reason that had nothing to do with the reason they left the group, because I was there when they left the group. I knew exactly why they left the group, and Doe talks about it in audio tapes. So it wasn't just my memory about it. Since I didn't ask them if they really said those things in those emails. I had no reason to doubt it. And I saw that repeated kind of thing through other email interviews. They were saying the same kind of things. And since I would write critiques about it and leave comments on that website where those articles were posted, they were freaking out that I was saying these things that was discrediting them as being the authorities that they thought themselves were over the whole Heaven's Gate legacy of their information.
And they weren't even in the group for the last 10 years of it.
Right. And they missed a whole bunch of things and about the way Doe thought. And obviously they weren't listening to the tape, so they would have seen, how badly Doe wanted to spread the information.
Yeah.
And he did. And they showed the evidence was very clear that Doe...
I wasn't even in the group, and I know that.
Yeah. And yet... they felt they more mutated into a condition to where they were the only ones that were meant to disseminate the information. When we have the direct instructions from Doe that the only task they were given was to divide the items of value in storage among those that wanted to
get it, first off to get it and then divide it.
Right, get it and then divide it. And that's the only task they were given regarding the information. Well, that's not the only task they were given, but they alone were given that task having to do with the audio tapes, because those were the items of value that we all know are items of value in storage that were stacked in the beginning, in the entry to the storage room.
As soon as Rakoti opened the door, there were boxes right there, and they contained the audio tape library of Tiendo.
Which Rakoti talked about in the manuscript that he wrote that we only recently got from Carloti.
And the only reason why Carloti hasn't made that public is because of Rakoti's daughter.
Right.
And
asked him not to.
Yeah, but that was seemed a while ago because my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, was that Carloti asked her if it was okay to include that in the lawsuit as evidence, and I believe that she said yes, so it has been submitted as evidence for the lawsuit, so.
Right, and you'll see a lot of quotes in that Bardo methodology interview on my blog, sawyerhg.wordpress.com, from Rakoti's manuscript, because I'm using that record of what happened in 1997, starting in when the group left, from when they received their FedEx packages on March 25th, 1997, as to counteract the lies that they've already been caught saying, even caught by Cathy and I in person in their lawyer's office, caught in lies. So they don't have their story set straight.
I wish I would have recorded that.
So they're very angry that we're talking about this even right now on these live streams, because they apparently have this view of themselves, and there's probably some other people in their, in their circle of friends and family even, that, believe the view that they have of themselves and the class, and they don't like when somebody is calling their hand. Now, this isn't
Look
a feud.
how cool that looks.
Yeah, that does look cool. Nice.
Hopefully I don't fuck it up like I fucked up the last girl's hair. Sorry.
So, because, so I've said a lot of things in the Bardo methodology that I was very hesitant to say in the past. And I didn't say everything that I could say about things that Doe said in those audio tapes. I didn't actually give direct quotes from Doe in the audio tapes.
Because it's a lot of work, y'all.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And not only that, I kind of want to, I was a little bit reticent to put tape numbers on everything and quotes, because, frankly, I want them to work if they want to find those things and try to doctor them in some way, and then claim that, we have the copies that were doctored. Or I don't know what they could do in that regard, but because you got Doe's voice.
Yeah, you can.
So how are you going to actually, but I was just, I'm not really into bashing them. I don't really enjoy it.
No, they're just trying to ruin our lives, so we're a little,
But they're being so negative that they don't deserve to maintain that website. And we're seeing to it, not we're seeing to it, but there's other people that are seeing to it that that they're not the only ones. They can continue with the website. I don't have a problem with that. But they need to stop talking about T and Doe if they're going to make up things about them when people send them an email.
Let's go to the chat, babe.
All right.
I'm hungry.
Yeah. Okay, based on the research, okay, so Project Carthage says the only pair of Nike Decades like the ones the group were on eBay are going for $6,600. Just checked. And then XF says, yeah, I reblogged your recent post onto my blog with the link for people to use in order to read your article in its entirety. And yeah, I saw that you reblogged that. I appreciate that. And then Varsity Bookworm says, Happy New Year, Kathy. And Sawyer, thank you, Varsity Bookworm.
Good to see ya in this new year.
See, as soon as I scroll down, then it goes way up.
I'm glad Varsity Bookworm showed up.
Yeah,
That's nice, putting faces to names.
yes. Rise Above is here too.
Awesome.
Happy New Year, it says.
Happy New Year.
Gosh, there's a bunch of comments.
Oh shit.
Okay, so Varsity Bookworm says Happy New Year, Kathy and Sawyer. Then he says, also, and update. I'm just about finished editing the first part of our interview. A lot of people
great.
have been asking me about it.
Great.
Can't wait to share it. Just
Me too.
need to put a few finishing touches. Great. Very good. And then Rise Above says Happy New Year. And
Happy New
Except
Year, Rise
says,
Above.
I used to buy watches that looked like Doe's watch in the final
Ooh.
exit video. I did that for
was
a while
noticing
years
that.
ago.
I
Interesting.
noticed that watch when we watched it at the event.
Hmm.
I thought, I wonder what kind of watch that is.
Mhm. Rise Above says, can't you use those tapes of those words as some kind of grounds for what should be done with stuff?
Well, yeah, that's what we're in the process of doing.
Yeah, if we have to, we will, for sure. If that's really a benefit. But see, we have the letters that were sent to Mark and Sarah because he gave them to Riccoti. And Riccoti shared them with Carlin. Carlin shared them with me. And I've shared them with other people. And so there's no, we know what instructions he received. And, and we've submitted that to the court. We've submitted a lot of things to the court.
We submitted a lot of
Yeah,
things.
because
to
we
the
also
court.
have testimony that they didn't receive all the rights to all the information.
Yeah, we
Because
submitted a
other
lot of
people
things
got
to the
rights
court.
to the information, like Riccoti and Juan Odie
Neody.
and Neody, right?
Rio.
Or Rio. So whenever they've said we own everything, we've copyrighted everything, they were lying.
Yeah.
They were just not. They were using words liberally. That's the way people in the world do things. When they want to convince somebody to stop doing something, they claim that they own it all.
Yeah, they were
make all
straight up
these-
lying.
Yeah. XF97 says the Left Behind, never seen before videos and never heard before audios that are seemingly available to big media companies belong to everyone, not just Mark and Sarah and big media companies only.
That's right.
We agree with that. That
Hopefully
their legacy was meant to be shared with the world.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get them and share them with everybody. That's what we're hoping to get out of this lawsuit.
MW1 Online is here. It says hello 2-in-1. Rise Above is here.
Hello, MW1 Online. Happy New Year.
It's odd to me that any religious text or audio can be owned by anyone. The pictures, I understand. Things like images, logos, etc. But the tapes, the words?
Yeah.
Well, you know how it works with songs and stuff. You can, people that write them can have ownership of them. But like a meeting, well, I guess Cathy just ran into the case of Gene Scott. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Well, so since Sawyer and I just listened to tape Beyond Human session 12, Doe talks about Pastor Gene Scott. And he says that he loves Pastor Gene Scott and that he felt that T was giving him instruction to bring up Pastor Gene Scott in that video, and that Gene Scott had, gotten off track, but that he also, these are my own words, that he also was onto something, that he had some next level knowledge Pastor Gene Scott wasn't really aware of.
He was one of the best scholars on the Bible history and
Yeah.
Egypt and the pyramids. And
So I didn't really know anything about Gene Scott except for in another tape that we had listened to. I can't remember which one. One of the later ones, actually, where Doe was talking about that one lady that dressed in costumes.
oh, Ruthie. Space.
But he also talked about Gene Scott in that same audio and talking about how he was eccentric. He would wear a hat. He would smoke a cigar. He would wear two different glasses at the same time, like two different pairs of glasses at the same time. I was like, what the hell? I gotta look this guy up. And one of the first things I saw, but yeah, Gene Scott was sitting there, Pastor Gene Scott was sitting there with a cigar and had two different kinds of glasses on.
I think one for reading and one for...
yeah, but it just looked crazy, right?
Yeah.
But that, Doe was talking about, calling more attention by the way that they acted and the way that they dressed to appeal to the masses, basically. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that's what was going on in that tape. But anyway, so after listening to to Beyond Human session 12 and Doe saying, I love Pastor Gene Scott, I was like, I think I should go listen to Pastor Gene Scott and see, what's going on with this guy. I feel like that's something that Doe was leading me to. So I went on YouTube and I looked at Pastor Gene Scott, and I'm sure if anybody is familiar with any of that kind of world, that people know that Pastor Gene Scott died in 2007 and that he had a wife, Melissa Scott is her name. She's a pastor as well. I don't know if she was a pastor while they were together. I haven't researched it that much. But there's only one video on YouTube of Pastor Gene Scott. One. Just one. And he has over 10,000 hours of tapes that he made. Probably even more than that. From when he started his ministry up to 2007. Thousands of tapes, probably. I don't know because I haven't researched it that much. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's one of his sermons. It's called The Taxonomy of the Church. Taxonomy. And it's about 28 minutes long. So I listened a little bit of that, and then at the same time I was looking at the next recommended videos on YouTube because I wanted to hear more than just the taxonomy of the church, which basically he was saying that taxonomy is like a system, it's an organization of the church, of anything, and he was talking about how financials of churches, and how at his ministry and his church they weren't going to be asking for money to have ancillary programs, offshoots of programs, that he was focusing on the Word of God in the Bible, as it's recorded in the Bible. And so I'm scrolling down and looking at the recommended videos, and they're all of Pastor Melissa Scott. And she's a very beautiful woman. She has very beautiful hair. She dresses very stylishly. I mean, she wears about the same suit, but you can tell it's tailor-made. She wears enough makeup to where she doesn't really look like she's wearing makeup, but she is wearing makeup. And she has kind of the same setup that Pastor Gene Scott had, where he had this whiteboard behind him and he would use markers. And he would write down the Greek, the Hebrew. He would write the scripture and then he would translate it as it was in the Greek and the Hebrew. And he would pull out words and, explain what they meant. But I don't know that because I haven't actually seen any of his sermons. I've just seen pictures of him doing that. Well, that's what Pastor Melissa Scott does as well. I actually saw her on TV a long time ago, many years ago. Like, she comes on at like 2, 3 in the morning on PBS or something crazy like that. And I remember, like, she was in front of this whiteboard with, like, all these Greek and Hebrew symbols and, like, all these scribbles and circles. And, like, she's, like, while she's talking about something, she'll, like, circle the word, like, 5 times in red. Or, like, it just looked really, like, what the hell is this lady talking about, right? Like, what's going on here? And I listened. I don't remember what she was talking about, but she is trying to do the same thing that he did. But I guess, regardless of that, I don't know anything about her ministry. She basically was given Pastor Scott's church and all of everything. So what Gene...
He willed it to her, right?
He willed it to her. He had a will. And he gave everything to her. And he had copyrighted every single one of his sermons. Every single one of them. All of them had registrations for copyright. Everything was copyrighted. Everything up until his death in 2007 was on the internet for free. For anybody to look at his sermons and listen to him. All of it was on the internet for free. What Pastor Melissa Scott did was she took all of his sermons down. She took them all off the internet. And then she just replaced them with her sermons. And there were people in the ministry from before she was even there that were pretty upset by that. And they wanted to hear Pastor Gene Scott. Apparently, I don't know because I haven't heard his sermons, but apparently he would talk about UFOs. He would talk about the pyramids. He would talk about Atlantis. He would talk about other preachers and their ministries. So, like, he would call Jan and Paul and Jan Crouch to task and ask them, I guess many negative things were said, many harsh words were said against a lot of other preachers because as Gene Scott saw it, Pastor Gene Scott saw it, they were whores for God. You know, he might have even said that. I don't know, that just popped into my head. But they're asking for money and, you know, making all these big, huge churches and pulling in all this money. And that was like what they cared about. So Pastor Gene Scott was calling all that out and saying a lot of harsh things. And Pastor Melissa Scott felt like those things didn't need to be out anymore. That all those things needed to be taken down. That was water under the bridge. And Pastor Gene Scott's battles were not his battles.
Her battles. Yeah.
Her battles. Underneath the one sermon of his that's on YouTube, there's the video immediately under that said the battle to perpetuate Pastor Gene Scott's legacy. And something inside me said, I need to listen to that. That sounds like she was having trouble holding on to his intellectual property. And it was 2 hours long. As I'm listening to it, it reminded me of Mark and Sarah and what we're going through. Censorship. There was an individual that had written to her and said, I was a student of Pastor Gene Scott. I've been listening to him since the 70s. I was in the ministry with him. And I want to play his sermons. I have some of his sermons. He sent me tapes. And I'm going to play them on my website. And I would respectfully ask for your permission to do that since you are the copyright holder, since he bequeathed it all to you. And her response was, over my dead body. Are you going to do that? Because she felt like all of those things that he had said about other preachers, that shouldn't be out. That was water under the bridge. Those weren't her battles. She felt that the sermons talking about UFOs, the pyramids in Atlantis, that in some of those sermons, I guess Pastor Gene Scott had read from books. And that he had gone well past fair use. And that she felt that if those sermons were still out, that the people that had those books could come after her ministry and sue her for copyright infringement for him using those materials in his sermons without having permission.
Sounds like a smokescreen.
So crazy. And I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking, oh my God. So I did a little bit further research and I hit on the individual that had basically sued her for the material, for all of the tapes, all of the sermons, and was taking her to task on it. That was her reasoning, though, that if she left up those sermons where he was calling other preachers to task, that would make Pastor Gene Scott a hypocrite, because he had mended bridges with those people, and she didn't want him to be a hypocrite. And she didn't want the other sermons out because maybe she'd get sued for that because of copyright infringement within those sermons. And I was like, I don't know, it just completely floored me. The individual has a WordPress blog, which I found. And he also listened to that, the battle to perpetuate Pastor Gene Scott's legacy. He listened to that as well. And it was interesting, his take on it. Pastor Gene Scott said that the devil wanted nothing more than to take him off the air, to get all of his stuff off the air. And this man brought up that 95% of his teachings have been taken off the air. 95% of his teachings are off the air. And that was a direct result of Pastor Melissa Scott. So, it reminded me of what Mark and Sarah are doing, where they have removed about 95% of T and Doe's teachings.
Yeah.
With the audio tapes.
Yeah.
Now, where Miss Melissa Scott has the upper hand is that Pastor Gene Scott willed all of his material to her. He gave it all to her. It's very clear in his will that he gave her everything. It says it plain as day. So she is the copyright holder of those materials. In our case, Mark and Sarah cannot prove that they are the copyright, that they legitimately had a claim on those materials to begin with, because the group did not leave a will. They never said anything, at least in writing, to Mark and Sarah, we want you to copyright all of our material. We want you to take all of our tapes and hide them away from everybody, and we want you to be the people who judge who can have those tapes. But only give them one tape at a time.
And which tapes
and make sure you start at number 1. Make sure that they don't get any other tapes unless you determine, you, Mark and Sarah, only you are the only 2 people on this entire planet that can judge every single buddy else on this planet if they're thirsty enough. Does that sound like something Doe would say?
Right, and for years...
I could be wrong. I really could be wrong about that, but everything that we've been listening to in the tapes, Doe talked for hours about how they could get the information out. In 1996 alone, almost every single tape that we listen to is talking about how they can get the information out. What is Doe's final exit? Why would he even do that if he didn't give a shit about having his information out? What is the last chance to evacuate planet Earth before it is recycled? Well, what is that? Right. What's the whole Beyond Human series?
The whole Beyond Human series, 1992.
It just blows my mind.
And the thing with this Pastor Scott, I remember when we were watching...
I want to hear those sermons.
Pastor Scott's sermons. One of the things that Joe got a kick out of was when Pastor Scott would be talking for hours, and then he would say to his audience, "Am I boring you?" Though, I mean, don't mention that, that was always funny for him to say that. And, because he said that to us one time, I think, as a joke. But, and, but the other thing that was happening with Doe, see in the 90s, in 1987, Doe felt like he received from T's being outside of the vehicle, the go ahead to examine bringing the information public for the second time after, after from the first time being 75 and 76. Okay, because after that, we weren't public at all until Doe kept on re-examining how to go public, which ended up happening in earnest in 1990s, 92, with the beginning of the Beyond Human series. So, at the time he was examining all this, he started really investigating the UFO phenomena for the first time. And he was buying all the books that were being written about it, and this was 1987. A UFO Crash at Aztec, and we already had the Roswell book in our library from before that.
The incident at Roswell.
Yeah, and we had the Hollow Earth book. We didn't have that many books, though, at that time. And he bought the Communion books, and later after that, the Transformation book from Whitley Strieber, and a whole host of books. And he started a video company with some students going to UFO conferences and recording some of the speakers, and with the idea of making documentaries about it and doing things like that. And then he went to the Sexaholics people to see if they would be an audience for our information, coming from a spiritual background. He was looking at evangelists that were putting their broadcasts on satellite TV, because we had satellite dishes that we would put in the front of every house that we leased. We would install it in the ground with the permission of the landlord. And then we ended up making stands for those dishes so that we could when we went out to the desert after we sold everything in the houses, and we went back into the desert with trailers and tents, we had these, and a generator, we were able to continue to watch the televangelists. And so we watched Paul and Jan Crouch from the Trinity Broadcasting Network, and then we watched the Van Ippies talking about the Book of Revelations, and we watched Zubin Mater, I think was his name, who was the head of the Messianic Jews at the time. Now we're talking about Jesus as the Messiah, but they were still talking about all the Jewish stuff surrounding Jesus coming, and so they were like new believers in Jesus at that point. And we were watching his broadcast. We were watching the Seventh-day Adventists talking about health, and they were into organic foods and pretty much vegetarian living, and we were looking at the people that were talking about health and diet, and going into everything that was progressive, examining if this was the type of people that we could talk to about our information, and how to adopt our lingo to their audience. And Doe had us make videos, and in those videos we were students were actually making videos, just talking off the top of their heads about T and Doe.
I wonder where those are.
Yeah, I don't know if we kept them all, but Junodi and I were. Doe decided that of all the videos that students were making, students and he felt like Junodi and Sawyer's video was one to use to upload to a Christian network on the satellite TV channels, and we did that. We uploaded it and got next to no responses, And then Doe felt like, well, he's got to go public because he didn't feel like Junodi and I or anybody else was really putting across the mind that he knew from T's mind, in the ways that it needed to be done. So he decided that he needed to make the Beyond Human series. And then after that, he did the UFO USA Today information advertisement put in USA Today in one issue, a third of a page. He bought it for $30,000 with the money that the group earned through their Atacraft tasks. And then he sent those periodicals. This is in the Heaven's Gate book is also documenting all this. Anyway, so anyway, regarding the televangelists, one of the things he said about Kenneth Copeland and Jimmy Swaggart and the Bakers and also individuals that we were watching on these broadcasts, and Doe said that some of them were saying all the right things, but they were missing that there was more to it. There was new information that had come that he and T had, and I don't know if he communicated with them, but somebody recently told us, I think Mark actually said, or I don't know who said this, that he had sent some, maybe it was in the HBO doc.
No, I think it was in Mark said it in Bardo Methodology.
Oh, that he had
they were sending tapes out, and people were
right
sending them back and saying we don't want your tapes.
He was sending some tapes out to people, although he says all their communications he was doing, when it wasn't all their communications, and I know that as a fact because I was there at that time that he was saying that, and anyway, but. That's all in the Barrow Methodology critique that I did on my blog. So, but one of the things that Doe said that they were saying, these televangelists, like Copeland especially, was that they were asking for money, and they were saying that if you didn't give to the organization, then you weren't going to be rewarded by God with riches, with more riches, and more, benefits from doing that. And yet the only God that would do that would be the opposite, would be the anti-God, the antichrist, the anti-true God. The people that, the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls, those are the ones that were behind many of the Christian preachers and many of the governments and many of the things that were happening in the world because of their agenda to keep people's eyes away from the truth that was coming from T and Doe, ultimately. And also keep them away from seeing the things that Jesus said that was the same truth that was being repeated and expanded upon by T and Doe to show the full classroom teachings to graduate. And so when Cathy saw this, it was with Melissa Scott. It was like, yeah, Mark and Sarah are doing the same thing. They're trying to censor the information. They don't want me talking about it. They don't want Cathy talking about it. They don't want anybody talking about the things that they're not doing or they're doing incorrectly by T and Doe's teachings that we have proof of. And so they want to keep it all away from people. And they're not doing hardly any effort to expand, the website, or, I mean, not expand it by, adding to it, but they could potentially, provide the audio tapes
links
there.
to the audio tapes, yeah.
Yeah, so, and of course, they don't want anybody to hear the things that Doe said about them, even though they may say that, well, yeah, but all those things changed when Doe gave us the new tasks to do. But they're evidencing that those things didn't change that got them sent out of the classroom. that they were too full of their own mind. They were looking to each other, and they weren't looking to know anymore for anything. And, well, I shouldn't say for anything, but certainly regarding the dissemination of their information, they were not looking to know, except in the little way that they keep the website alive, which Carlin and I have both offered, and maybe Cathy has also offered to take off his hands and figure out a way to pay for, because they're not doing that much with that. I can't imagine that costs that much for a website that doesn't have any video on it that's playing or audios that are playing. You know, that's not that expensive to do anymore. So, so we could certainly do that and do a better job than
well,
they're
and
doing.
answer the emails.
Yeah. Instead of telling people not to do anything and to just study the information in case they might reincarnate in a new classroom, like, that's too late then. You know, now is the time for people to see the information and hear the information. And they're so afraid that people are going to kill themselves that
Right.
they're bending over backwards and they're ignoring the fact that nobody's killing themselves for this story anymore. I mean, nobody hardly did, except individuals that had been with the class and felt like it was time for them to leave.
Well, and anybody that's talked to Sawyer about, you know, they're ready to take that step, he talks them out of it.
Yeah. I don't think I can go wrong by talking him out of it, because all I'm going to be doing is saying, you need to communicate with Doe, and you need to put into effect the things that Doe gave us to do, the ones that were left behind, and study their information so you know how to disseminate it, so that you can stand up in their defense, be willing to do that. So if you're not doing that, then how can you expect that just leaving by committing suicide is going to advance you to anything?
Yeah, that's not my personal opinion, and it is my personal opinion. That's not what is being asked of us as people that are connecting with this information. Even though Doe did talk about in Doe's final exit and last chance that if you connected with the information, that you could study their material and leave with them while they were still relating to this planet. I feel like our task is to share their information with everybody. So we have an opportunity to make the choice whether we want to stand up for them or not. It's not to, take you can't achieve the next level without a rep physically present on this planet. You can't achieve overcoming without a rep physically on this planet.
To the stage of graduation, right?
Yeah.
You can make progress on your overcoming. You can make, and progress is great.
Yes.
And we don't know, what somebody is capable of, because we're not the judges. But if we can judge what T and Doe gave us and to who they gave us and the whole body of information, and doesn't encourage. What it encourages is starting a relationship with Doe. That's a working relationship of service, to where you're asking him, "How can I be of service? What can I do to serve you?" And there's only one Doe, okay, and he's in the heavens. He's outside this Earth's atmosphere. He's in deep space with his spacecraft, and they have computer systems that know when you're actually talking to Doe in your thoughts. And because they've designed this system, it's radio waves, but they know the band of the radio waves that our mind puts out. It is really that technical and accurate. And so they offer then help to anybody that wants to take that direction, and they're not gonna give anything to somebody that that person can't handle, and handle in a way that a member of the next level would handle it. But to learn how a member of the next level would handle it, that's the benefit of listening to the audio tapes, listening to the reading the Heaven's Gate book, and listening to the videotapes, and not just listening to them, but really, soaking them up, which is going to take listening to them a number of times. I know that as a fact, that none of us gets it all in one shot. I don't think it's possible.
There's so much packed into them.
Yeah, it's like, people that read the Jesus materials, they can read it over and over again, and over time they realize that they didn't understand a lot of things that he said. It's the same thing with T and Do's information. We don't understand a lot. I don't understand a lot that they said when I was there, and I still don't understand a lot. It's layers of understanding.
Yeah.
That actually, so we can understand it to a degree from the beginning to know what he's talking about, but then, so we shouldn't just, in my opinion, not that we should or shouldn't do anything, but if we want to be a student and we want to serve, then we should never assume that we understand everything completely. So that we're always like looking for them to give us a clue. And the way that we can get verification of our clues is to keep on looking at the material and reading the material. But on the censorship subject, which I don't want to say much about more, because maybe we want to end this, even though there's lots of comments still.
Well, we should at least read the comments.
Just look at the world and the amount of censorship that's taken place since even 2020. 2019, 2020. And I'm not going to go any further than that, but there's a lot, and it's still fuming. There's at least two forces working against, and one is more prone to censorship in one way, and then the other one is for censorship in another way, and sometimes they meet together for total censorship against what the next level's teachings are. But they're also dealing with each other, censoring each other, so that certain truths aren't told, or certain people aren't able to tell the truth. Shadow banning, all the different terminology, the different ways that's happening.
Let's get to the comments.
Yes. Yes, I will.
Because we're hungry.
Yes. Marcus had nothing. Okay. Except said Marcus had nothing to do with the Heaven's Gate material. They did away with a bunch of the material. Then they just get around and basically suck their thumbs for 25 years. Okay. And Rise Above says XF. That's almost exactly what they did. Randomly making materials available from the website. The XF says also Mark and Sarah retroactively made Dave G. the vice president of the Tila Foundation in 1997, even though Dave met with the Kings in 2008.
XF, will you email that information to us again? I think Carlotti had sent it. Get out of here.
Yeah,
right
we
now.
did get it, but
Not
I'd like to
messing
see
with
it
you right
again
now.
because I don't know where I put it.
Yeah, because there's something fucky going on with that. Excuse my language, but there's something weird going on with that.
So it seems as
Doesn't
though
make sense.
he says. So it seems as though the record forms were fudged by Mark and Sarah.
Yeah, it's weird. That whole situation is.
Yeah, with the whole making the Tila services into the Tila Foundation, something weird with that going on too.
Well, and just like the way that they're suing us, it's the evolutionary level above human corporation doing business as the Tila Foundation.
Yeah.
Like, we're trying to figure out
What are they trying to protect in that?
What the hell that means.
Right. Then MW Online says, sorry about everything bad that happened.
Thank you.
Yes, we know. But the thing is with this is part of the territory of dealing with the different things that the lower forces throw at people.
Okay, next comments.
So it can all be made a positive out of. XF97 says, unbelievable what the Kings have done with their lawyers. Sounds like Mark and Sarah are Luciferian plants. IMO. In my opinion, their actions certainly demonstrate that they are obviously agents of the lower forces.
Yep, let's move on. Move on.
Rise Above says, all power moves. Just want to control everyone and everything. Yeah. Mark and Sarah don't care about Heaven's Gate information. Looks like, this is XF again, look to me like they are just gravy train to them. All about money, not much money, but it's still to do with money while using T&O as figureheads. I don't really think it's about money. But,
yeah, we don't think it's about money. They're not making any money.
Yeah, we haven't seen any evidence they're making any money.
Yeah, they're not making money. It's all about the power.
I mean, you could say that they want to make future money by like having the movie made and then being able to, have all the trademarks and copyrights so they can make money that way. But I don't know.
No, they think that they were tasked with being the guardians and the protectors of the material. That's what they think. That's what they've said.
Right,
repeatedly.
Protecting the material by hiding it from people.
Right.
Because it's of sensitive nature. They said that to us.
Yeah, that's what they think. No one's making any money.
Because they get flack. Obviously, they get flack. We get flack too. By standing up for T&O, even in the little way that they're doing. They are the face of T&O to much of the mainstream through the website. And so they do get flack and negativity from that. But that's part of the task. And if they don't want that, they should pass it on to
right, that's what they said to us, that we shouldn't be fighting because they get enough negativity. But they're the ones that started this fight, so.
Yeah. Project Carthage says, Mark and Sarah's point in sending their lawyer to discharge is so that you can't pay them and are left financially destitute for the rest of your lives.
Yep.
It's common legal tactic for when the plaintiff doesn't actually want the money, they just want to hurt someone.
Yep.
Yep, that's what seems to be happening. XF97 says, rise above, it's all about money and power, and the Kings, in my opinion, they could care less about T&O because it's all about using them for their own profit, but the tides may turn on them. Rise Above says, XF, we have always agreed on that 100%. XF says, Rise Above, MW1 Insights, do you think there's any planet compared to Earth? Well, not exactly. According to T&O,
short answers.
Earth was used to be a location for the garden development. It's possible. And there are other planets that have human equivalents on them that are like Earthlings. But those planets don't necessarily have the lower forces here. Project Arthur says, did T&O ever give any sort of instruction how to identify representatives of the next level like them? No, because there aren't any others. It's just them. There's others that have been doing degrees of positive things with human population, okay? But none have had the formula for evolving beyond the human condition, except for T&O and people in the past, like Jesus, Elijah, Moses, Enoch, and Adam in this civilization. Before that civilization, this civilization, we don't know. Except the Buddha was an example of someone that might have been the next level
short
task.
answers.
Project Carthage. Oh dang, I tried to send a playlist of over 1,000 Gene Scott sermons and videos, but URL didn't show up in the chat. Huh.
Send that to sawcat575@gmail.com.
If you don't mind.
SAWCAT575@gmail.com. Please.
That's it, and looks like
We're going to have some ramen.
Stephen Turner said T and Do are absolutely right.
That's right.
I like that. Jonathan Miner says all the planets will align in a rare setting.
Yes, that's happening. I don't know if it already happened but yeah, that's happening.
Yes, T and O are moving on the next steps for this planet, for the entire civilization. Their timing is not the same timing as the human environment. Okay, folks.
Hold on, I'll come back out there.
All right, then I'll just say a little bit more about that, and that is, Doe was talking in next level time. He had his mind, by the time of his departure, was I'm not saying totally all the mind he had. He couldn't have all his mind in that vehicle. The vehicle couldn't handle it. But he was not operating. I mean, sure, in the day-to-day activities, he operated with human time. Okay, so he didn't talk. But other than that, it was like a day was like 1,000 years. So a day to the next level is like 1,000 years on Earth. That's how different their sense of time is. Even though they don't have clocks in the next level, they go by events. Events are what, and you can see where they were teaching people that by operating by the festivals in the Old Testament, going along with the moon's cycles. Okay, so Project Carthage says, sure. In other words, he'll send us that. Thank you. I'm just waiting for Cathy to come back to say goodnight.
I drank a lot of tea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I drank a lot of water.
Good.
I've been talking so much.
That's good. Well, from us to you, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We're glad that you guys wanted to spend it with us because we know you could be out doing a lot of other things for New Year's. A lot of people do. Stephen Turner had asked us if we would do a live stream, and that he couldn't think of anywhere else he'd want to be than hanging out on a live stream and learning about T and Do. So we're thinking maybe other people felt that way too. So, and we didn't want to be anywhere else either. So we left 2022 with you guys, and we'll start 2023 with you guys. So, and gals too.
You're here.
We love you.
We love you.
And we love T and Do.
Yes.
And we love the next level. And hopefully we'll be coming to a town near you soon.
There's a lot of things to be able to share with people, especially after watching that HBO again, The Heaven's Gate Max, Cult of Cults by HBO Max. There's a lot to say to correct that misinformation so that people can hear.
Yep.
Good night.
Thank you guys. Good night. click, click. There's the cloud.